The silence of deep space erupted with tension as humanity's first deep space exploration fleet encountered the Krell hegemony on that fateful day in 2157. Massive crystalline ships stretched across the inky blackness, their geometric surfaces reflecting starlight with an almost organic shimmer. These were not the sleek, predictable vessels of human imagination, but living constructs of silicon and advanced quantum technologies that defied conventional understanding. Lieutenant Commander Elena Rodriguez studied the holographic displays of the UES horizon, her fingers tracing the intricate network of sensor readings. The bridge hummed with a mixture of anticipation and barely contained anxiety. 12 years of preparation had led to this moment, humanity's first genuine deep space encounter with an alien civilization. The Krell communication came as a shock of brutal efficiency. No diplomatic niceties, no attempts at mutual understanding. Just a cold, calculated transmission that translated with crystal clarity. Unregistered species detected. Territorial violation imminent. Surrender or face immediate termination. Rodriguez's executive officer, Commander James Chen, leaned closer to the primary display. "They're not asking for dialogue," he muttered, his voice a mixture of professional calm and underlying tension. Earth's deep space initiative had always been a calculated risk. With global resources stretched thin after decades of climate reconstruction and interplanetary colonization efforts, this mission represented humanity's first true step beyond its solar system. The Horizon and its 3 accompanying vessels, the Pathfinder, the Everest, and the Quantum, represented the pinnacle of human engineering. Quantum adaptive hull systems, experimental faster-than-light drives, and distributed neural network computing gave them capabilities that had seemed like science fiction mere decades ago. But the Krell scans told a different story. Their initial sensor sweeps treated the human ships like nothing more than cosmic debris, primitive constructs that barely registered as technological entities. The alien vessels surrounding them were massive, easily 10 times the size of the human ships, with weapon signatures that suggested technological capabilities generations beyond Earth's current understanding. "Threat assessment," Rodriguez commanded, her voice steady despite the circumstances. The ship's artificial intelligence system compiled data with ruthless efficiency. Holographic projections filled the bridge, showing stark comparisons between Krell and human technological capabilities. Weapon energy signatures dwarfed human defensive systems. Structural integrity readings suggested the alien ships could withstand bombardments that would obliterate human vessels in seconds. Survival probability is currently estimated at 3.2%, the AI reported, its synthesized voice devoid of emotion. Commander Chen's hand instinctively clenched. Those are not good odds. Rodriguez knew the stakes better than anyone. This mission represented humanity's first true test on an interstellar stage. Failure meant more than the destruction of 4 ships. It potentially meant the end of humanity's dreams of galactic exploration. The Krell ships began to move, their crystalline structures realigning with mathematical precision. Energy signatures started to build along their weapon arrays, a clear preparation for what they considered an inevitable elimination of a potential threat. "They're not interested in communication," Rodriguez observed. "They've already decided our fate." But something burned within her, a fundamental human trait that no technological scan could detect. Determination, adaptability, the ability to transform hopeless situations into unexpected victories. The Krell might have superior technology. They might have millennia of interstellar experience, but they had never encountered humanity before. And humanity was about to show them exactly what that meant. As the alien ships prepared their attack, the crews of the human fleet exchanged glances, not of fear, not of resignation, but of a shared understanding that they were about to write a chapter of history that no one, not even the Krell, could predict. The first weapons discharge came without warning. Krell energy beams lanced through space, each pulse carrying enough destructive potential to vaporize entire planetary settlements. Commander Rodriguez watched the incoming projectiles with an almost supernatural calm, her hands hovering above the quantum adaptive control interface. "Quantum resonance field," she commanded softly. The UEA's horizon shimmered, not with the traditional energy shields of science fiction, but with a dynamic living membrane that seemed to breathe and adapt in real time. Where the Krell expected a direct impact and immediate destruction, something entirely unexpected happened. The energy beams struck the horizon's hull and transformed. Quantum entanglement principles that had been theoretical only decades ago now manifested as a near-magical defensive mechanism. Each incoming energy pulse was not merely deflected but was momentarily absorbed, analyzed, and then redirected. The ship's neural network interface processed weapon signatures faster than any computational system the Krell had ever encountered. Commander Chen's eyes widened. They're not just reflecting the energy. They're learning from it. Indeed, the horizon was doing something unprecedented. Each weapon impact became a data point, a learning opportunity. The ship's adaptive systems were reconfiguring its molecular structure in microseconds, creating defense mechanisms that had no precedent in known physics. The Krell fleet's communication networks erupted in what could only be described as computational confusion. Their targeting systems, which had predicted a millisecond-perfect destruction of the human vessels, suddenly found themselves tracking targets that didn't behave according to any known physical laws. Lieutenant Sarah Kimura, the ship's quantum systems engineer, worked frantically at her station. Her fingers danced across holographic interfaces, pushing the ship's adaptive systems to their theoretical limits. What the Krell saw as random fluctuations were actually sophisticated real-time computational adjustments. "We're not just defending," Kimura muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "We're analyzing their entire technological infrastructure." The accompanying human ships, Pathfinder, Everest, and Quantum, began to demonstrate similar capabilities. Where traditional military doctrine would have suggested a defensive formation, these vessels moved with an almost organic unpredictability. They weren't just ships. They were living, learning entities. A Krell communication burst translated on the bridge's systems. The message was unlike anything human linguists had anticipated. It wasn't a war cry or a tactical communication. It was something closer to computational bewilderment. Anomalous defensive matrix detected. Computational models, ineffective. Predictive algorithms, failure. Rodriguez allowed herself a slight smile. Humanity's greatest weapon had always been its ability to be unpredictable, to innovate, to transform limitations into opportunities. The quantum neural interfaces connecting the human ships created something the Krell had never encountered. A distributed intelligence that functioned more like a living organism than a traditional military fleet. Each ship shared information instantaneously, adapting not just as individual units, but as a collective consciousness. A secondary Krell weapon system fired, a more sophisticated pulse designed to overwhelm adaptive defenses. The human ships didn't just defend, they responded. The horizon's hull momentarily transformed, developing microscopic structures that absorbed and redistributed the incoming energy. It was as if the ship was breathing, expanding and contracting with mathematical precision that defied conventional understanding. "They're treating warfare like a conversation," Chen observed, watching the tactical displays. And indeed, each weapon impact was becoming a form of communication. The human ships were learning the Krell's technological language faster than the Krell could adapt their own systems. What appeared to be chaos was actually the most sophisticated form of technological dialogue ever witnessed. The Krell had expected a simple extermination. Instead, they found themselves engaged in a first contact scenario that challenged every fundamental assumption of their millennia-old civilization. As the first engagement concluded, something became terrifyingly clear to the alien fleet. These humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something entirely new, a technological life form that didn't just adapt. They transformed the very nature of adaptation itself. The research station orbiting Europa became ground zero for humanity's most aggressive technological development in history. What had begun as a modest scientific outpost now hummed with an intensity that would have been unimaginable mere weeks earlier. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, Alina's cousin, and the station's chief research director, worked with a team that barely slept. Captured Krell technological fragments were dissected, analyzed, and reimagined with a speed that defied conventional scientific methodologies. Where traditional research might take decades, they were making breakthrough adaptations in days. We're not just reverse engineering, Dr. Rodriguez explained during an encrypted communication with Fleet Command. We're engaging in a form of technological dialogue. Each Krell system we analyze is teaching us as much as we're learning from it. The Europa station represented humanity's most dynamic response to the alien threat. Military researchers, quantum physicists, xenotechnological experts, and computational linguists worked in shifts that blurred the lines between collaboration and collective consciousness. Their approach was fundamentally different from the Krell's hierarchical knowledge systems. Commander Alina Rodriguez received daily briefings that seemed to defy scientific logic. Quantum adaptive materials that could restructure themselves at the molecular level. Communication systems that didn't just translate language, but could potentially interpret entire conceptual frameworks. Weapon systems that were more like living organisms than traditional armaments. The fleet's quantum neural interfaces underwent constant refinement. What had initially been experimental technology was now being pushed to evolutionary limits. Each ship became a learning entity, with computational capabilities that merged human creativity with adaptive machine intelligence. Lieutenant Kimura's team discovered something particularly fascinating. The Krell's technological systems, while advanced, followed rigid computational models. They were efficient, but ultimately predictable. Human systems, by contrast, introduced controlled randomness, a concept that seemed counterintuitive, but proved devastatingly effective. Predictability is a weakness, Kimura explained during a classified briefing. Our systems don't just respond. They anticipate by creating multiple potential responses simultaneously. The European Space Agency, NASA, and the newly formed Global Defense Technological Consortium worked with unprecedented collaboration. National boundaries seemed to dissolve in the face of the alien threat. Resources were pooled, research was shared in real time, and competitive impulses were replaced by a unified human strategy. Quantum computing labs around the world began receiving encrypted data packages from the Europa station. Each package contained fragments of Krell technological understanding that researchers began to piece together like a complex, multidimensional puzzle. Dr. Rodriguez's team made a breakthrough that would change everything. They discovered that the Krell's technological systems operated on a fundamentally different quantum principle. Where human quantum systems used probabilistic calculations, the Krell used what could only be described as a deterministic quantum model. It's like they've designed a universe where uncertainty is eliminated, one researcher noted. But in eliminating uncertainty, they've also eliminated adaptability. The implications were profound. The Krell's technological superiority was simultaneously their greatest strength and their most significant weakness. Their systems were so perfectly calibrated that they became brittle when faced with truly unpredictable inputs. Experimental weapon systems began taking shape. Not traditional missiles or energy weapons, but adaptive computational platforms that could reshape themselves mid-engagement. Each system was less a weapon and more a problem-solving entity with destructive capabilities. Communication intercepts revealed growing confusion within the Krell command structures. Their initial reports had characterized humans as a primitive species. Now those reports were changing. Words like unprecedented and computational anomaly began appearing with increasing frequency. The Europa station worked around the clock. Coffee machines ran continuously. Researchers consumed nutrient packages designed for maximum cognitive performance. The station had become more than a research facility. It was humanity's primary weapon of defense. As the first prototypes of the new quantum adaptive systems were completed, a sense of cautious optimism began to spread. Humanity wasn't just preparing to defend itself. They were preparing to demonstrate that technological evolution was about more than advanced systems. It was about the capacity to learn, to transform, and to exceed every known limitation. The Battle of the Orion Nebula would become a moment etched into galactic history, the point where humanity transformed from a potential footnote to a decisive force in interstellar conflict. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, her posture rigid, but her eyes alive with a calculated intensity. The nebula's swirling gases created a backdrop of impossible beauty, now transformed into the most critical battlefield in human history. 17 Krell capital ships surrounded the 4 human vessels. The disparity was overwhelming. Traditional military doctrine would have suggested immediate retreat or surrender, but humanity had never been particularly good at following traditional expectations. Quantum entanglement sequence initiated, announced Lieutenant Kimura, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe and pulse with living energy. The human ships began to move in what appeared to be a chaotic, almost random pattern. To the Krell tactical systems, it looked like the desperate thrashing of prey. In reality, it was a sophisticated distributed computational strategy that defied every known principle of space warfare. Each human ship was no longer just a vessel. It was a node in a living, adaptive network. Information transferred instantaneously, tactical decisions made faster than any centralized command could process. The quantum neural interfaces had transformed the fleet into something more than a military unit. It was a collective intelligence. The first Krell weapon discharge came with surgical precision. A quantum compression beam that should have instantly vaporized any known spacecraft. But the UES Horizon did something impossible. The ship didn't just deflect the weapon. It absorbed it. Molecular structures within the hull reconfigured in milliseconds, breaking down the incoming energy and redistributing it across the ship's adaptive matrix. What should have been a fatal strike became nothing more than additional computational input. Commander Chen's voice cut through the tension. They're treating each weapon impact as a communication protocol. Indeed, every Krell attack was being analyzed, understood, and transformed into a tactical advantage. The human ships were learning faster than the alien vessels could adapt. Each moment of conflict became a conversation, a brutal, high-stakes dialogue of technological capabilities. The Krell communication networks erupted in what could only be described as computational panic. Their targeting systems, which had predicted millisecond perfect destruction, suddenly found themselves tracking targets that didn't just move unpredictably. They evolved unpredictably. Rodriguez activated the experimental quantum resonance weapon system. It wasn't a traditional weapon in any sense. Instead, it was a computational platform designed to exploit the fundamental weaknesses in the Krell's deterministic technological framework. Adaptive frequency modulation, she commanded. Full spectrum engagement. The weapon didn't just fire. It reached out and began to fundamentally rewrite the computational language of the Krell's defensive systems. Each pulse was a line of code, each energy discharge a potential viral intrusion into their most secure networks. 2 Krell capital ships suddenly went dark. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply disconnected from their primary computational network. Lieutenant Kimura's voice held a mix of scientific fascination and warrior's triumph. We're not just fighting. We're communicating in a language they've never understood. The battle became less about physical destruction and more about a profound technological dialogue. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was demonstrating a fundamental truth about technological evolution, that true innovation comes from the ability to transform, to learn, to become something entirely unexpected. As the engagement continued, the remaining Krell ships began to exhibit signs of computational confusion. Their perfectly calibrated systems, designed for absolute predictability, began to break down when faced with an enemy that refused to follow any recognizable pattern. Rodriguez watched the tactical display. What looked like chaos to an outside observer was actually the most sophisticated form of strategic engagement ever conceived. The human fleet moved like a living organism, each ship adjusting, learning, evolving with each passing moment. By the battle's conclusion, 12 of the 17 Krell capital ships had been effectively neutralized, not through overwhelming firepower, but through a form of technological judo that turned the aliens' own computational rigidity against them. The Orion Nebula fell silent, but the message was clear. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Krell High Council convened in their central crystalline chamber, a space that had remained unchanged for 3 millennia. Holographic representations of the battle near the Orion Nebula played and replayed, each review more disturbing than the last. Archival Coordinator Xel Naga, the eldest of the current council, watched the human fleet's movements with a growing sense of existential dread. The computational models failed repeatedly. What should have been a simple extermination had become something far more complex, a fundamental challenge to everything the Krell understood about technological hierarchy and interstellar conflict. "They are not a species," one council member whispered. "They are a computational anomaly." The transmission logs from the battle defied conventional analysis. The human vessels had not just defended themselves, they had engaged in a form of technological communication that the Krell had no framework to understand. Each weapon discharge, each defensive maneuver seemed to carry layers of meaning beyond simple military engagement. Diplomatic channels, typically a rigid and formulaic process for the Krell, began to shift. Intelligence reports no longer classified humans as a minor species to be subjugated. The classification was changing, becoming something far more nuanced and potentially threatening. On the research stations orbiting the Krell's central worlds, xenotechnological experts worked frantically. They dissected every fragment of data from the human encounter. The quantum neural interfaces, the adaptive ship systems, the distributed computational strategies, each element challenged fundamental Krell understanding of technological development. "It's as if they view technology as a living organism," Dr. Vornak, the lead xenotechnological researcher, reported to the High Council. "Not a tool to be controlled, but a collaborative partner to be nurtured and developed." The implications were profound. The Krell had spent millennia perfecting technological systems based on absolute predictability. Their entire civilization was built on the premise that advanced technology meant increased control, increased precision. The humans demonstrated something entirely different, a technological approach that embraced uncertainty as a fundamental strength. Diplomatic protocols were hastily revised. The initial invasion plan, which had been a mere formality in the Krell's eyes, now became a complex strategic consideration. Humanity was no longer a potential threat to be eliminated. They were an unknown variable that required careful understanding. Intelligence gathering intensified. Every piece of human communication was analyzed, reanalyzed, and analyzed again. Earth's public broadcasts, scientific publications, even cultural media became sources of intense study. The Krell sought to understand not just human technology, but the fundamental philosophy that gave rise to such unprecedented computational approaches. The battle logs revealed something even more unsettling. The human fleet hadn't just defended itself. It had learned. Each engagement became a form of rapid evolutionary adaptation that defied the Krell's most advanced predictive algorithms. "They are not fighting a war," Archival Coordinator Xel Naga observed during a closed council session. "They are conducting an ongoing technological dialogue that we do not yet comprehend." Faction divisions began to emerge within the Krell leadership. Some advocated for immediate and total destruction of the human species. Others, a growing minority, suggested a more nuanced approach. Study, understanding, potentially even communication. The diplomatic corps prepared unprecedented communication protocols. How does one engage with a species that views technological interaction as a form of conversation? The traditional Krell approach, hierarchical, precise, controlled, seemed laughably inadequate. Intercepted human communications added to the complexity. Unlike the Krell's rigid, protocol-driven interactions, human communication was messy. emotional, unpredictable. Scientific discussions were interspersed with cultural references, humor, personal anecdotes. It was as if their entire civilization was a continuous, adaptive process of mutual understanding. The research stations began to compile what would become known as the Human Anomaly Reports. Each document challenged more of the Krell's fundamental understanding of technological and societal development. As the council deliberations continued, one thing became crystal clear. Humanity was not just another species to be cataloged and controlled. They were a fundamental disruption to everything the Krell understood about technological evolution. The galaxy was changing, and the Krell were beginning to realize they might not be at the center of that change. The Sirius system became the crucible of humanity's ultimate technological test. 17 Krell battle groups converged, bringing technologies that had crushed civilizations for millennia. Their mission was clear: total and absolute elimination of the human threat. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UVS horizon, her hands hovering above interfaces that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. The quantum neural network connecting the human fleet had evolved beyond any previous understanding of distributed computing. "Incoming primary assault vector," announced Lieutenant Chimera. Her voice was calm, almost clinical, despite the overwhelming odds. The Krell attack began with a precision that had decimated countless civilizations. Quantum compression beams lanced through space, accompanied by gravitational disruptors capable of tearing molecular structures apart. Each weapon represented millennia of refined technological development. But the human fleet did something unprecedented. Instead of presenting a traditional defensive formation, the 4 human ships began to move in what appeared to be a chaotic, almost organic pattern. Each vessel seemed to communicate instantaneously, sharing tactical information faster than light could travel. The quantum neural interfaces had transformed the fleet into a single adaptive organism. The first wave of Krell weapons struck, and was fundamentally transformed. Where traditional defensive systems would have attempted to deflect or absorb energy, the human ships began to integrate the incoming attacks into their own computational matrix. Each weapon discharge became a form of communication, a data point in an ongoing technological dialogue that the Krell could not comprehend. Commander Chen's voice cut through the tactical noise. "They're treating warfare like a conversation." 2 Krell capital ships suddenly went dark. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply disconnected from their primary computational network. The human fleet had done something beyond traditional electronic warfare. They had engaged in a form of technological judo that turned the aliens' own systems against them. The battle became less about physical destruction and more about a profound technological dialogue. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was demonstrating a fundamental truth about technological evolution, that true innovation comes from the ability to transform, to learn, to become something entirely unexpected. Rodriguez activated the experimental quantum resonance weapon system. It wasn't a traditional weapon in any sense. Instead, it was a computational platform designed to exploit the fundamental weaknesses in the Krell's deterministic technological framework. "Adaptive frequency modulation," she commanded. "Full spectrum engagement." The weapon reached out and began to fundamentally rewrite the computational language of the Krell's defensive systems. Each pulse was a line of code, each energy discharge a potential viral intrusion into their most secure networks. Lieutenant Chimera's team had discovered something profound during their research. The Krell's technological systems, while advanced, followed rigid computational models. They were efficient but ultimately predictable. Human systems introduced controlled randomness, a concept that seemed counterintuitive but proved devastatingly effective. "Predictability is a weakness," Chimera had explained during earlier briefings. "Our systems don't just respond. They anticipate by creating multiple potential responses simultaneously." The Krell commanders watched in growing horror as their most advanced predictive algorithms failed repeatedly. The human fleet moved like a living organism, each ship adjusting, learning, evolving with each passing moment. What looked like chaos to an outside observer was actually the most sophisticated form of strategic engagement ever conceived. 12 Krell capital ships had been effectively neutralized, not through overwhelming firepower, but through a form of technological warfare that turned the aliens' own computational rigidity against them. As the final moments of the confrontation approached, something extraordinary happened. The remaining Krell ships began to exhibit signs of computational confusion. Their perfectly calibrated systems, designed for absolute predictability, began to break down when faced with an enemy that refused to follow any recognizable pattern. The Sirius system fell silent, but the message was clear and unmistakable. Humanity had not just survived. They had redefined the very concept of technological engagement. The galaxy would never be the same. In the battle's aftermath, the Krell are forced to negotiate. Humanity is no longer seen as a minor species to be conquered, but as a potential dominant force in galactic politics. The quantum adaptive technology developed during the conflict begins to attract the attention of other alien civilizations. Captain Rodriguez becomes a legendary figure, not just for her military achievements, but for demonstrating a new paradigm of technological and strategic thinking that challenges millennia of established galactic warfare doctrine. The research vessel UES Horizon, renamed from its previous military designation, drifted at the edge of known space, a living testament to humanity's transformative potential. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge, watching holographic displays that mapped potential exploration routes into uncharted galactic regions. 15 years had passed since the conflict with the Krell. The technological and cultural revolution that followed had reshaped human civilization in ways no one could have predicted. Earth had transformed from a planet struggling with internal conflicts to the center of a new collaborative interstellar paradigm. The quantum neural interface technology that had been developed during the war now drove human exploration to unprecedented frontiers. Each new star system became not just a destination, but a potential conversation, a chance to learn, to adapt, to understand. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, now the lead director of the Interstellar Collaborative Research Initiative, reviewed the latest data streams from deep space exploration missions. The human approach to discovery had become fundamentally different from previous exploratory models, where traditional exploration sought to classify and control. Human missions now approached each new encounter as an opportunity for mutual understanding. "We're not just mapping stars," he often said during his lectures. "We're engaging in a continuous dialogue with the universe." The global economy had been completely restructured. Traditional competitive models have been replaced by collaborative frameworks that emphasized adaptive problem-solving. Educational systems were rebuilt to nurture the kind of innovative thinking that had proven so crucial during the Krell conflict. Lieutenant Sarah Kimura, now a senior researcher and technological advisor, continued to push the boundaries of quantum adaptive systems. Her work had expanded beyond military applications, finding revolutionary uses in medical treatments, environmental restoration, and interstellar communication. Diplomatic relations with multiple alien civilizations had become increasingly complex and nuanced. The human approach, embracing uncertainty, viewing challenges as opportunities for growth, had become a model for interstellar cooperation. The rigid hierarchical systems that had dominated galactic politics for millennia began to show signs of fundamental transformation. The Krell, once the most technologically advanced civilization, had undergone their own internal revolution. Inspired by human technological and cultural approaches, they began to reimagine their own societal structures. Some Krell researchers now actively collaborated with human scientific teams, a relationship that would have been unimaginable before the conflict. Quantum adaptive technologies found applications in ways no one could have initially predicted. Medical researchers developed treatment protocols that could adapt to individual biological systems in real time. Environmental restoration teams created technologies that could rehabilitate entire planetary ecosystems with unprecedented efficiency. Commander Chen, now leading diplomatic training programs, emphasized a new approach to interstellar relations. "Our greatest weapon," He would tell new diplomatic candidates, is our ability to see potential where others see only limitations. The UES Horizon represented more than just a research vessel. It was a living symbol of human potential, a ship that was simultaneously a scientific platform, a diplomatic envoy, and a learning entity. Its quantum neural interfaces continued to evolve, becoming more sophisticated with each mission. As the ship prepared for its latest deep space exploration, Rodriguez reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this point. The conflict with the Krell had been more than a military engagement. It had been a profound moment of cultural and technological awakening. New colonies emerged on distant planets, each representing a different approach to human expansion. These were not traditional colonial efforts, but collaborative settlements that sought to understand and integrate with local environments and potentially existing ecosystems. The communication arrays aboard the Horizon picked up signals from civilizations that were just beginning their own journey into space. Instead of seeing them as potential threats, humanity now approached these emerging civilizations with a spirit of mentorship and mutual understanding. "We're not just exploring space," Commander Rodriguez said during a live transmission back to Earth. "We're engaged in an ongoing conversation with the universe itself." The holographic displays continued to map potential routes, each potential trajectory representing not just a physical journey, but a philosophical exploration. Humanity had learned that true discovery was not about conquest or control, but about understanding, adaptation, and continuous growth. As the UES Horizon prepared to jump into uncharted space, the message was clear. The greatest frontier was not space itself, but the unlimited potential of collaborative intelligence. The journey continues. Themes explored. Adaptability as the ultimate technological advantage. The power of collaborative intelligence. Human innovation as a form of evolutionary strategy. The unpredictability of emerging technologies. Collective problem-solving as a strategic weapon. A testament to humanity's unexpected potential in the vast, complex theater of galactic civilization.